Welcome to Midlife Trucker with your host, Tom Bell. I'm an OTR truck driver with a company called Cheeseman LLC. I know there's lots of trucking vlogs. Why did I want to start a trucking vlog? A lot of people have told me, Tom, you should do a vlog, and I thought about it, and I've even tried a couple vlogs a few times. Vlogging's not easy. The people who make it look easy, those are the people who are really good at it. Those are the people you should be following. But anyway, I decided I was going to try and start a trucking vlog. We got the new year coming up, so let me get a few episodes out and try it out and see how it works. In this one right here, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to tell you a little about my trucking experience. Now, I've chronicled it all over these YouTube pages. You can go all the way back, and you can see from the start. I've shared compensation videos from the start. I've talked about loads. Everything from the time I started. I started in trucking October of 2019. Prior to that, I was a corporate executive, a senior vice president with a company called SCNI. It weighed on me. I did a lot of laying off as we downsized or right-sized. It went from chasing revenue and growing to looking for how we could cut the expenses, and it just weighed on me, and I finally made the decision it was time to leave. So I went to a company called Millis Transfer. I didn't pick Millis Transfer out of the phone book. I actually looked at quite a few companies to decide where to go and get my start. And Millis Transfer was the one I chose because I evaluate carriers on culture, home time, equipment, compensation, and knowledge. Millis offered good home time. Now, I didn't know all the questions to ask, so culture was kind of a hard one to try to figure out. But one of the things that they really had going for them was instead of team driving during training, they trained. That meant that when I was driving, my trainer was in the passenger seat. In the event he had to drive, which he didn't drive very much while I was training, he was in the driver's seat, I was in the passenger seat. Because if you're team driving, you can't learn a lot from the bunk. Now, that was just my philosophy and my feelings on it. So, like I said, that was the culture part. Home time, I got home every other week with Millis. I worked 11 days out, 3 days off. Loved it. Worked perfectly for me. It was great. As for equipment, fantastic equipment. Kenworth T680s, fully loaded. Had all the options. They even came with a TV, direct TV, XM stereo, an inverter, refrigerator. They had all that. They definitely had some of the best equipment in the business. Compensation? I didn't do too bad. I made $62,000 my first year. Knowledge, I learned a ton there. But I was ready for that next step. And I found Cheeseman, the company I currently work for, through research and networking. Now, I know I said I've been driving for 5 years. We couldn't have spent all that time here at Cheeseman. No, I left Cheeseman briefly. Now, I was making six figures here at Cheeseman. I was enjoying it, getting good home time. I stay out about 14 to 21 days. Depending on when the weekend falls in there, I work to get home during that period so that I can be home for a couple of weekend days with the wife and then a couple of weekdays. I just try to make it all fit. So I'm flexible. Flexible could be my middle name. I like taking different loads, going different places. But I had that wanderlust, like everybody does. Hey, I want to try something new. I want to be a lease operator. So after 18 months at Cheeseman, I left and went to Arter Express. Made good money at Arter. Best money that I've made in any trucking company when I was at Arter. But the company's culture wasn't that good for me. Home time, fine. I got home every other weekend. That was great. The equipment wasn't so good. There was leased equipment from Penske. I had to fight with the shop a lot just to get them to do things on the truck. Every time I picked up a trailer, it seemed like there was something wrong with it that had went unreported and that I had to wait to get fixed or fix myself or drag it to a shop. I wasn't happy. And I did learn quite a bit while I was there. Did a lot of drop and hook, got to see a lot of different shippers and receivers. I left there after 9 weeks. Didn't stay long, left after 9 weeks. It was a walkaway lease. You were able to leave without any penalties. I went to Christensen Transportation after that. Christensen Transportation, they got an okay culture. I didn't really get to meet and deal with a lot of the people there. I was only there for 15 weeks. And you don't get by the terminals very often, so you don't really see them. You might run into another driver occasionally, but that's pretty much it. Home time, I was home every week. Home time was great. Equipment, top of the line. Had a brand new Peterbilt 579 80-inch sleeper with an Ultraloft. Top of the line. Every option in the book, including TV, microwave, refrigerator, inverter, they had it all. Truck was loaded. They even have internet in those trucks. It was a good truck. Equipment was top-notch. Trailers, great condition. Never had a problem. My truck never had to be repaired in 15 weeks. One time went to the shop just for a regular oil change or grease job or whatever they do. You know, the voodoo the mechanics do. And I learned a lot there. Again, checked off a lot of boxes. Compensation-wise, I was making about $1,600 a week. And I know a lot of people say $1,600 a week, that's great. Not if I'm going to be a lease driver. If I'm going to be a 1099 lease driver, I want to make more than company drivers. I don't want to have that kind of risk and be making less than I made as a company driver. But Tom, you're buying a truck. Not really, because the balloon payment at the end of one of these leases, you're not going to wind up buying the truck. That's something to always make sure you're asking if you're getting ready to go into a lease. Now, Prime Inc. is a different situation. That's why they pay so much for those. That's why their weekly payments are so high, because they own the truck at the end of the 3 years. Other companies, that's not the case. At the end of the 3 years, you have the option of going to another truck, or you can pay a big balloon payment and get the truck. So just ask all the right questions. You'll have to learn what questions to ask, but learn the right questions when you're thinking about a lease. Now, back to a company driver. I had left Cheeseman on good terms. Always leave your carrier on good terms. I know people say, park the truck, leave the keys on the dipstick, let them deal with it. Don't give a notice. I gave a notice. I worked out a notice. Working out a notice was a good thing because when I decided I wanted to go back to Cheeseman, I sent an email. Simply asked one of the vice presidents. I said, hey, am I eligible for rehire? And if so, can you find me a truck? Got back a message almost immediately. Said, yes, you're eligible for, and I'm working on the truck. I gave a month's notice to Christensen and worked out the month's notice. I parked my truck on a Thursday at their yard in Stratford, Missouri. Friday morning, I turned the truck in, flew to Greer, South Carolina, where one of the mechanics picked me up. Actually, the lead mechanic picked me up. And he took me back to this is a Saturday now, took me back, and my load was ready. My truck was ready, and I started pulling my first load. I barely got a 34-hour reset in before I was already rolling with the new company. Wasn't any downtime here. So I came back to Cheeseman. I've been back to Cheeseman now for over 2 years, and I love it. I love what I do. I love it here because they treat us like adults. They treat us like the professionals that we are. We don't have internal cameras. They're not babysitters. They're not watching us all the time. You're not getting calls from safety, constantly wanting to know why you did this, why you did that. They expect you to be a professional. Now, does that mean if you're following too close or something, you're not going to get reached out to? No, they're going to reach out to you. Now, I've only had that happen a couple of times over the entire time I've been here. If you act like a professional, they treat you like a professional. We don't get these loads where they tell you, you've got to fuel at this fuel station. You got to got 30 gallons here and 50 gallons there. We don't do that. We're professionals. You fuel at a Pilot or Flying J, and you pick where you're going to fuel, and you pick the one that's on your route. Try to pick some of the cheapest. That's the way adults are treated. That's the way professionals are treated. When you're given a load, they say, hey, here's your load. You figure out when you're going to get there. You figure out if you're going to drive 10 hours today and 6 hours tomorrow. Maybe you're going to drive 8 and 8. Maybe you're a solar driver. Maybe you're a hard charger who wants to do 11 hours and, that you get that 10 hours and 59 minutes and slip into the parking place and shut down. That's your call. You want to drive days? You want to drive nights? Your call. You figure it out. You're the professional. You'll figure it out. The other neat thing is they ask you, what do you want to do? Man, that's a hard thing to get used to. What do you want to do, Tom? You walk in dispatch. What do you want to do? Or you call in. What do you want to do? There's none of that pressing, ready for dispatch, and they say, okay, well, I'll work on a load for you. No, that doesn't happen. What happens here is before I get done with this load, they're going to tell me what my next load is. They might reach out to me. They might just put it on you because they get to know you. We don't have like one fleet manager or driver manager or dispatcher that controls a fleet. The dispatchers control areas. So you might leave and go into Indiana and Steve will be your dispatcher. You might pick up a load that goes down to Texas and Bob will be your dispatcher. You might head out to California, and those are kind of rare loads there, but you might do a California load, then Becky's your dispatcher. Get down into South Carolina or North Carolina or Georgia, and you're going to have Aaron or you're going to have Rhonda or maybe Matt give you a call and ask you what you want to do. It's kind of at the first, it's a little bit hard because you got to kind of establish rapport with all these dispatchers. But as time goes along, you establish good rapport with all these dispatchers and they learn who you are and how you run. And they try to work with how you run. If you're a solar driver, they're not going to give you a load that's pressed for time. That's the other thing. Most of our loads aren't pressed for time. If you just aren't up to it today, call them. Tell them. Say, hey, I'm still going to make it. I'm going to get there Thursday afternoon. They're okay with that. Most of our loads are just when you get them there loads. And that works for me because I'm a guy who likes to look at the math and try to figure out the best way to get it there. I want to talk about things like I didn't know the right questions to ask before going to work for companies. I want to talk about those kind of things. Because, heck, most drivers don't know the right questions to ask, not just to recruiters, but to ask other drivers. We kind of think we do, but we really don't. And it's kind of crazy. You think you do, you think you know all these things, but how many people before going to the current carrier they're at, did you ask if you were allowed to use adverse conditions in your logs? Did you ask how many miles of PC or hours of PC you're allowed to use? Did you ask if you're allowed to use yard move and what speed a yard move cuts off? These are things we didn't think to ask because, well, it's just not high on your list. The main question everybody asks before going to another company is, what's the CPM? How many cents per mile are they going to pay you? There's a lot more to it than cents per mile. You got cents per mile, you got stop pay, you got detention, you got paid 34-hour resets, you got layover, you got handling. All of these are things you've got to think about, add up. You got bonuses, safety bonuses. You got to add all that stuff up. And then you divide that by the number of miles you run, and that's what your actual rate is. We'll talk about all that in future vlogs. I think this one's kind of went long enough. Hopefully you guys didn't get bored out of your gourds. And I'm going to actually start on the next one. And the next one is going to be about my day today, but I'm putting it out tomorrow. So don't try to send me a pizza at the truck stop that I say that I'm at, because I'm not there anymore, okay? Just putting that out there. Let's all be adults and treat each other like adults. And make sure you're enjoying every day at work.